I'd like to call to order the October 18th, 2022 Board of Selectmen meeting. Welcome. I would like to ask that we rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. First on the agenda, we haven't been doing this because I haven't really been focused on it, but recognition does show up here as sort of the first order of business. So probably we don't have any now because I don't think anyone was thinking about it, but going forward, we'll ask if there's anything that anyone you guys want to recognize.
Okay.
Okay. And remind me to do that if I forget.
Yeah. Sounds good.
First on the agenda, special municipal employee designation for the Board of Assessors. We had spoken about this a couple weeks back, and the motion is here before us to discuss.
So just as a preamble, we did this just a short month and a half ago with the Land Stewardship Committee. So first we designate the committee itself, the membership, as being eligible, and then we identify the person that plays the role that then is allowed to be designated as a special municipal employee. So because of the unique nature of Upton being a small town, we have a lot of people with multiple hats. So we're just trying to clean up some of these as they come along.
And this is a situation where there's compensation on the Board of Assessors. That's why we're
correct. And there's 20C and then 20D. So here, this is 20D because it does deal with a position that does receive compensation rather than a volunteer board, which is what we were dealing with last time, which was 20C.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. And so this is for Bill Taylor, who's a municipal employee and also is serving on the Board of Assessors, which he's done for quite a time. Yep. Is this something that we need to do once per term or once a year? How often?
No, once it's
okay.
And I guess
so it seems like it probably should have been done in the past because this isn't a new situation, right?
Right. I suppose just full disclosure, I should mention what Bill's role is within the town.
Yes.
So,
Bill, do you want to talk a little bit about the work you're doing for the DPW? And
okay, I am the department coordinator for the Department of Public Works. I pay the bills, I create the water sewer bills, various other administrative duties. And I'm paid to do that full time. I make about $54,000 doing that. And I should have probably disclosed this earlier. I just wasn't aware of it being a necessity.
Sure. Just to be clear, I was calling us out, not you, in terms of the oversight. So certainly there was no obligation on your part to understand the ins and outs of all these, but it's good that we've got a town manager that's focused on these things and bringing additional discipline to the administration of local governance. So that's really important. And we appreciate everything you do, Bill, obviously. Your service far precedes mine, so I'm just grateful to be here with you. Okay. Any questions or?
No,
I have nothing.
Okay.
I'll make the motion.
Okay.
I move that the Board of Selectmen vote to authorize the town manager to sign the disclosure by municipal employee of financial interest in a municipal contract as required by General Law, Chapter 268A, Section 20D, by designating members of the Board of Assessors as special employees and to allow William Taylor, an existing employee, to take a second position with the town assessors.
I would second the motion.
All those in favor?
Aye.
The motion carries by unanimous action. Thank you, Mr. Taylor.
Welcome. Thank you.
Next on the agenda, we have the town manager report, please.
Okay. So just reminder, at the last meeting, had identified that the recreation department was coordinating a Halloween decorating contest. They did recently just extend the deadline to October 26th for people to register their addresses. If people are interested, visit the town's recreation page or email recreation@uptonma.gov for more information. Voting season and town meeting season for that are upon us. Early voting starts on Saturday here at Town Hall and will continue through the rest of the week during normal business hours. Election day is November 8th, and polls are at the Nipmuc High School. Just town clerk also let us know that approximately 1,500 ballots have been mailed out. So their office has been very busy processing, mailing ballots over the last week. Today, our town planner, Paul Delaquila, it was his last day, so we were doing not only farewell, send-offs. He's going to be very missed here in town, but also meeting with him to go over projects and ensure that we can continue supporting the planning board and operations in that office. I did contract with CMRPC to provide 8 hours a week of administrative support for the next 2 months, and hopefully we'll have someone on board by the end of the year. Treasurer Collector's Office, just wanted to remind everyone that tax bills are due November 1st, so that's coming up. HR is continuing to fill key positions within the Land Use Inspectional Services Department. As we all know, and it's starting to get a little cooler out there, wanted to point out that the Elder and Social Services Department does provide a lot of resources for town residents, especially those in need. The Social Services Coordinator is in the process of helping people fill out fuel assistance applications, and also there are programs through National Grid for assisting people in need. If people have any questions or want more information, please contact the Social Services Coordinator. On November 1st, we're going to be holding a special town meeting. The warrant has been posted, so please pass it along. I know that while we had a lot of discussion on one of those articles compared to some other town meetings, this may seem a little bit subdued, but we still want to make sure people get out and attend town meeting. Last week, the Housing Production Plan Steering Committee met. They're working with Central Mass Regional Planning. They approved a community survey, which CMRPC is currently finalizing, and we will be basically starting to distribute that later this week. Basically, it's about a 16-question survey trying to get people's thoughts on various needs in town for housing. Why people value staying here in Upton, living here, what would get them to stay in Upton. So this survey is going to directly feed into the development of that housing production plan. And that survey will run through the middle of November. That steering committee is all gung-ho, lots of energy, and I know the next 6 months are going to be pretty busy with that committee to really work on pulling together that housing production plan. So that's it.
Good. Great. Any questions?
I was just going to make another comment to that, Joe. That will be on the town website if people want to log in and download a copy of that, fill out the survey.
Correct.
And we'll also have some hard copies of it available as well. I don't know if we have some.
Yeah, so we'll have not only hard copies available, but also Central Mass Regional Planning is pulling together a poster so we can walk around to some of the businesses. There'll be a QR code so that people can fill out that survey directly on their phone. We're also looking at doing some additional mailings and realistically, looking into sending each and every household copy of the card with the QR code to make sure that we get as much exposure as possible.
Awesome. That'd be good. I think that's very important to try to get as much feedback as we can. It's not often we ask and cast
No.
such a broad net. So having the opportunity to get input from a lot of people with a lot of different perspectives is going to be helpful, particularly for a
Right.
program like that where we're trying to.
Which was such a hot button topic just 6 months ago.
For-
So
for-
we're hoping for a good turnout and a lot of
Exactly.
participation, but it's amazing statistically
Yeah.
how little input you actually get when you
Yeah.
look at 8,000 residents.
Yeah.
You know, what is your goal with what you really hope to receive? So
Yeah.
it'll be interesting.
Very good. Anything else? Okay, excellent. Next up on the agenda, we have any public input, public comment from folks on the phone or in the room on any topic. Okay, next up on the agenda, we have an appointment for the Cemetery Commission that we started previously and wanted to discuss. Have you made or had a opportunity to have a conversation about the applicant?
Yes, sir. We have met.
Okay.
We haven't had a discussion.
Okay,
We haven't been,
okay, very good. Would you like to share that opinion?
assume we're gonna vote on this eventually.
Yeah.
At that point.
Oh, fair enough, fair enough. Okay. We have the application in front of us for Alfred Palladini. Do folks have any questions? I know we met him last time. He spoke with us and shared his interest and his background and experience. Is there any more discussion we wanted to have about it? Otherwise, I will entertain a motion.
I thought he, went into great depth, talked about his interest in the board, willing to put forth time in the board. I'm perfectly fine, with selecting him as a candidate.
Mhm.
I believe he's our only candidate at this point. So,
Same.
Okay, very good. Well, then I will entertain a motion.
Yeah,
well, a nomination or a motion?
motion. Oh, not, well,
I'm
yeah,
going to nominate him as a candidate. How would you like to do that?
I think that if you just make a motion and then we can discuss the motion and we'll take a vote. So we'll take the motion. If the motion carries, then we will discuss the candidate as a group and then we will take a vote on that motion.
Okay.
I tend to agree with Steve on, you have to have a nomination first.
Okay, go ahead.
I would nominate Alfred B. Palladini.
I would second that motion.
Okay. All those in favor? You want to do a roll call vote? Okay.
Stephen Mattelli and I?
Maureen Dwinell, aye.
Aye.
I'm all right.
Brett Simus, aye. Okay, so the nomination is accepted. I'll take a motion to appoint.
I'll say a motion.
I move that the Board of Selectmen and the remaining members of the Cemetery Commission vote pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 41, Section 11, to appoint Alfred Palladini to fill a vacancy for a term expiring May 2023. Stephen Mattelli and I?
Maureen Dwinell, aye.
Brett Simus, aye. Motion carries by unanimous action. Next, we have an appointment for the Board of Assessors. And this applicant is Valerie Leonardo. Is Valerie here by any chance? Oh, there you are. All right. Do we have any questions or discussions? Valerie?
I thought we had legislation going forward so that we could appoint the principal assessor as a member to the board of assessors.
The board.
We opted not to do that.
You are,
as a board.
So here, Valerie is a Upton resident. And also one of the things is currently on our screen is our only member of the Board of Assessors.
I am the Board of Assessor.
Yeah, the board of assessor.
And
I like it.
And in order for us actually to go through and set the tax rate, we need to have a certified board. One of the things is that Valerie is also a certified assessor, so that her appointment allows us actually to go through and not only have someone with a lot of experience serve on the board, but then also so we can proceed and do things like setting tax rates.
Okay. Take a motion.
Well,
Or-
discussion, I guess I'll say discussion wise, this was actually one of the reasons I was not in favor of that legislation. I kind of look as a board functions in one way, similar to how the Board of Selectmen would function. Our town manager, right? We have almost an advisory supervisory role with our town manager. And I feel that the Board of Assessors should have that same role with our principal assessor. So I don't feel that assessor should sit on the board, is my personal opinion. I just feel like there's a little bit of a conflict there. I think that should be, a seat for the population at large to interact with our assessor. But obviously, we're in a bad spot if we only have one assessor at this point in time.
Can I ask a question? How many years has the principal assessor sat on the board of assessors?
Hasn't.
Have they ever in the past?
In other communities, it regularly happens, but in Upton, it hasn't. One of the main things is that this is the first time we're having a position of principal assessor. Previous, it was assistant assessor. We are faced with some unique circumstances, and the fact that to be a certified assessor, you do have to go through programs. You do have to keep up with certifications, which require classes and things like that. So it's more than just volunteering on a board. So here, understanding, Steve's perspective, we also are in a unique circumstance where we do not have any candidates that are also certified as assessors coming forward to volunteer for the board. This vacancy has been in place for 2 months so far. By having an additional certified assessor on the board, it allows us then to open up and consider people who are not certified with the hope maybe to bring them along. This is also a temporary appointment. It's only through May. And then that first seat, one is would have to be on the ballot for a 1-year term. And then we still have a second vacancy, and that would be a 3-year term. So the reason why I submitted that proposed warrant article was, specific sort of seeing ahead of not necessarily getting out from under this situation, but also in a number of towns, the principal assessor does take more of a proactive role in serving on a board of assessors. So.
What does that time commitment look like for a potential candidate if they want to be an assessor? Is that a 1-day class, a 30-day class, or how does somebody go about getting the necessary requirement to serve on that board?
So that there is 2 modules of course 1. It's called Course 101. It's issued by the Department of Revenue. You have to complete the first module and module 8 in order to receive the certificate that Bill Taylor did receive and prior assessors that sat on the board did receive. And that was the minimum requirement. And that is about a week's worth of time. It's self-guided. You could do it in a day, but it might take up. There is you do have to pass the exam on there with 70% or better to pass. It's pretty straightforward, but to get the full certification that I have was 3 years.
That's it.
Any other questions?
No, I have no other questions.
Okay, so if we appoint Valerie, she would serve until May, which would provide us runway to try to find, I mean, we still can fill the third vacancy at any point.
Right.
So there's still a seat that needs to be filled on the Board of Assessors. So if we appoint Valerie, she would serve until May, and then there could be another decision made in May to reappoint or otherwise. Question is, if we don't appoint Valerie, what are the implications of that for the Board of Assessors, for the process, the administration of all of the inner workings of the town and the board? I mean, part of the question is like, is that even an option?
I think it sounds like we're not able to set the tax rate. I think ultimately the quick answer is if we don't have a functioning Board of Assessors, we can't set the tax rate. We probably don't have to even pull the bill in. So I think
Then I think.
we're in a pickle.
Okay, so
Obviously.
how would you like to get us out of this pickle, Mr. McCallum?
I either got to vote no and hope the two of you vote yes, or I'm going to have to vote yes and go against my gut feeling, vote yes, and keep the board functioning.
Okay,
I'm going to keep you in suspense.
you're gonna keep me in suspense. Okay, any other comments?
I have none.
Okay,
Maureen, do you have any comments?
I will entertain a motion.
I'll do that. I move that the Board of Selectmen and the remaining member of the Board of Assessors vote pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 41, Section 11, to appoint Valerie Leonardo to fill a vacancy for a term expiring May 23rd.
I second the motion. All those in favor? Motion carries by unanimous action.
And just for the minutes,
Yeah, we're gonna do the second motion as well, but
No, Bill has to.
right.
Right, so Bill Taylor as the Board of Assessor votes aye.
thank you.
So now that Valerie has been appointed to the Board of Assessors, just like we did for Bill, now we have to do the same for Valerie.
I move that the Board of Selectmen vote to authorize the town manager to sign the disclosure by municipal employee of financial interest in a municipal contract as required by General Law, Chapter 268A, Section 20, subsection D, to allow Valerie Leonardo, an existing employee, to take a second position, the town on the Board of Assessors.
I would second the motion.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries by unanimous action. Thank you, Valerie. Thank you, thank you. Next on the agenda, we have a joint meeting with the Trust Fund Commission. Welcome, Trust Fund Commission partners. How are you?
Good evening.
I will open this up. This is your agenda item, so
If I may, Mr. Chairman, the board was in receipt of our letter dated September 22nd. We want to be emphatically clear that this is our intent to work compatibly with the board. And, you know, some of the suggestions we make, we realize it's difficult to implement immediately, but we feel that these issues are paramount in order to effectively maintain the process within the trust fund. One of the, if I may, I'd like to go through the issues, and I'm sorry, I want to first introduce, this is Paul McDonough from RBC Wealth Management. Paul is the agent that works with the town of Upton as to our trusts and how we invest the money. And we meet with Paul at least once a quarter. We review the trusts. We have an allocation plan that we stuck with, and we all know the market's a little crazy right now. But so far, we've been consistent. So Paul will be able to answer any of your questions as it comes up. I'd like to first open up the first question, and we've spoken to the town manager about this. There are trusts that were originally in the treasurer collector's office that we cannot locate the original documentation. And it was our understanding that an agency was hired to come in and scan and record documentation of all the trusts. And now there are probably anywhere from 6 to 8 who do not have the original language of the trust. In order to properly manage the trust, we certainly need that. So we would like to ask the board through the town manager, if there is a process to get this company to go back and revisit and see if they can produce the documentation, as well as to ask other town departments. And I use as an example, like the library trustees, if they have copies of any of the trust documentation within their holdings that we could get. It's our intent, obviously, to get all the trusts properly recorded and in a file so that they are available not only to the trust fund commission, but to all town departments. So
And residents.
through the chair, I know the town manager has worked with this agency, so I'll defer to you people for that.
I mean, I don't know anything about the process, so like, what's the process? What's the cost?
So the
How long
town,
does it take?
so the town had hired a company.
Where do they look?
Yeah, the short answer is that the town, when they came in and had a company come through to not only scan, what they did was they, and Sandy, correct me if I'm wrong in any of this, please.
Okay, I'll try. I was not.
So they didn't destroy any documents. All the documents are on site. What they ended up doing was basically inventorying and put it into a database. But
All town documents, not just
Correct.
trust documents.
correct.
Yeah.
So realistically, in looking through the notebook as far as what was done, I looked through and saw it just said town treasurer documents. Literally, we would need a tax work-off person to go through each of the treasurer collectors boxes physically to look for documents. And that's pretty laborious. That company, basically we're just giving them, they organize it and then they're out. So there isn't for anything for them to search through. Staff who had not only overseen that project, but also were the ones in charge of maintaining the database. Those people have since left. So right now, we'd have to not only bring people up to speed as far as, how to manage that and the database that was set up, but all the boxes. We just would need guidance as far as what names and things to look for, and then just manually go through.
Yeah.
Stuff.
Do we have a list of the trusts and what the status is of each of them, so we know what they would be looking for?
What we can do is we can provide you a list of the trusts, especially the ones that we have no record for. And that would assist you in the search for those. Because, and I'm going to get to this further, a lot of the trusts, the language is ambiguous. So we need the actual documentation because we are going to request that council review the trust and do a legal interpretation of their meaning and how they should be addressed. I'll get to that later, but we will provide you a list of what the trusts that we feel are missing, as well as all the trusts which you will have.
Yeah.
So we do know the names of 26.
Yes, we do.
Trusts.
So
Yeah. But it's like,
That just offset.
and I mean,
What I'm wondering is on those 8 to 10 trusts, are those particular trusts look like they were set up with the original will and testament, or do you think they were set up by surviving family members?
all the trusts that.
And the reason I ask is the fail safe would be to go back to the will and testament to see, what would be in there, I would assume, if there's a trust set up.
Well, we've got some that go back to 1930 something. The likelihood of going back and finding it anywhere, these were entrusted to the town, and once the town accepts it, they're responsible for the trust. They're the only ones that would have copies. I don't think even going back to dating that the registry needs or any legal department within the Commonwealth would have record of it. So we will provide you the list and go from there and see if we can.
Great.
In order to move this
hang
along.
on one sec. Sandy, you have a question?
Have these documents been seen since we moved back into town hall?
Yes, can I answer? So I was the treasurer and I had all of these in a very specific location down in the treasurer's office. So last week 2 weeks ago, I went down to physically look for them. They're not physically there anymore. We had a copy, I had a copy of every will and provision for those wills, as well as some, I think there was articles where we had to accept money back in 1942. Every copy we had up till 2 years ago. When I went down in that location, there's nothing there.
In the
It's
office?
gone.
In the office?
In the office, yeah.
Okay. So presumably we'll have to, I mean, I think there's a couple of things, right? Once we have a list of all of the trusts and what the disposition of each one of them is in terms of what information we have and what information we're looking for, are all of those 8 to 10 trusts, do they all have balances? Because I know some of them really just have like a few dollars in them. And
Well, they are all in many of them are in what's called a pooled account.
yeah,
And RBC Wealth, rather than manage 12 individuals when they have balances of $1,000. So they are in what we call a pooled account. So they are maintained that way.
okay. So we don't have any idea individually what each of those trusts has as a balance. All of those trusts are in one pool of money.
We know the balances each trust has, but we don't have copies of the trust.
Okay,
The money's been, the pool account is managed as a lump sum of money.
right.
We know each individual trust in that. So this one has $500.
Yeah, that was my point. It's like, let's have each of all of the trusts and what the balance is, because if some of those 8 to 10 have less than $100 in them, I'm not going to pay some consulting company to look around through 20 boxes of paper to find the information on how to administer the trust. It'll cost us more to find it than the trust is worth.
That's the second problem. The first problem is that we physically don't have the wills, but the second problem is we don't have an end of the year number for those 28 accounts.
Why not?
That's our question to you, because it would be published, normally it'd be published in the annual town report. We did not have one in the last annual report. That report was usually done by the treasurer collector myself when I was in office, but it's not there. So one of the important things that we have to come up with a solution is how to reconcile IBC Dane's numbers that he says that we have in stocks and bonds and et cetera, as well as what the financial director has.
Yeah,
Dane's treasurer.
Yeah.
All three numbers have to match together.
they sure do. Yeah, that's an unfortunate byproduct. I'm assuming a collective mismanagement on all of our.
I can, and I'm not being cute, but we were hoping the treasurer would be here tonight to have dialogue to that. It is the role of the treasurer collector to produce those numbers in conjunction with the finance director. And as Ken said, it was an annual process that was in the town report, and we have copies we can provide you, that listed all the trusts and the expendables and non-expendable funds within.
Okay, we don't need to get too far into this. What I think I would say is we all agree that those three sources of information need to tie, and we collectively need to come up with a process to make sure that happens. And so that's one of the takeaways from this discussion, is to make sure that that happens.
I think it's in process. That Jess is on board, because I met with her about 2 weeks ago, and she's working with Kenny to get it done for 6/30, 2022.
Mm-hmm.
But, they just need some time, I think, to.
Yeah. Perfect. I'm glad to hear that.
One of the dilemmas that, and it's been brought to our attention before, is that the ongoing balances within the trust, your board has at times sought to appropriate money from trusts and have asked, what's the balance? So what we'd like to do, working with all the financial departments, is have some form of tracking. It could Paul's company could have it, but it could be 60 days or 90 days in arrears because actions could take place that he did not know about the post. And there seems to be some confusion that expendable funds does not mean that the funds are liquid cash. Only 5% of the expendable finances are in cash. The other 95% are in fixed assets. So if it's a large withdrawal, it would obviously require some effect to the investments. And
Yeah,
that would
and again, I think if we have a clear list of what all the accounts are, what the disposition of the directive on how they should be administered is, whether we have it or don't have it, if we have it, what it is, if we don't, great, what the balances are. We could even have in there of those balances, how much is in the principal, which is non-expendable, and then of the expendable, give me a column that says in, held in cash, held in other investments. We can see that because we may say, you know what, if an account has $3,000 in it, just leave it in cash. I mean, it's not going to be the end of the world. If an account's got $800,000 in it, then we want to be able to disperse $25,000 at a whack, then we need to have $50,000 of that expendable balance in cash, right? So if we see the numbers, then we can have a conversation about what those numbers should be, right? And if we want to hold more or less in liquid cash based on how we disperse those funds.
And let me piggyback on that for a second. And if that 5% is a solid number, let's just say that you continually, that's the way you allocate that every one of the funds, you use the same type of allocation. So again, if we know that we have 500,000 that's expendable out of a particular fund, we know 5% of it is in cash. Versus, as Brett had mentioned, if you have another account that has $3,000 in it, well, if we can expend the 3,000, we know that only 5% of that is held in cash. So that would be helpful for us to know. But while I've got the floor for just a minute, as I had a minute or 20 minutes really to kind of study this and think about it before the meeting, I think as a board, we probably don't communicate as well as we should. It'd probably be better to meet a little more often so that you'd have more up to date if we do expend money, which it really isn't all that often, but that you should find out about it sooner rather than later. So if we do make an expenditure out of one of the funds, I don't know if it's 30 days or 90 days before you gentlemen know about that. And at the same time, if you're meeting with, I'm sorry, not your first name, Paul from RBC, if you're meeting with him every 30 days or every quarter, it'd be nice every quarter to get an update. At least tell us what you know as of that particular snapshot in time. So I think there's room for both of our boards to really be coordinated much better. Again, if 4 times a year or 3 times a year, whatever the situation is, if you can get us an updated list of what our fund balances are, that'd be great for us. And we should be able to do the same thing
For you
to say, okay, well, we met 2 or 3 times under executive session in the last 4 months, and this is what we've expended out of ABC Trust. So I think cooperation, coordination, and communication really between the 2 boards, I think is the first step really to streamline some of the issues that we have here. And they're important. I'm not trying to diminish what you brought forward.
To Steve's point, when we vote to allocate funds to something, they have to issue a check. At that point in time, I believe that the trust fund should know that this money is coming out, not every quarter, but every time we issue a check, it should go through the trust fund and then passed on to Paul at RBC. And I mean, whether the money is there or not, he has a record of that. That now at the end of the year, and this is when it all happens, is at the end of the year, and it shouldn't. It should happen as it's allocated, whether it be 2 times a month or once a month or once every 2 months, but they should be notified.
Right. I mean, Paul really probably sees it before the trust fund.
So I actually don't. So actually,
No.
I typically don't see it until after the end of the year, because what happens is the town makes the expenditures, and then at the end of the year, the town accountant kind of informs the committee and the treasurer of what was expended. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, so the gating,
Can I ask a question?
sure.
You don't see that debits coming out of the account?
No,
Not until the end of the year. We do at the end of the year, there's a reconciliation that's done. And the trust funds reimburse the town.
The trusts aren't held at RBC, the accounts, the money?
They are held at
I think the
RBC.
money's
So how does money get debited out of account without
it
the?
comes,
free cash account. We
Right.
don't lunch ourselves.
it doesn't come out of the trust funds until what Paul's saying is at the end of the year, which is wrong.
And the town.
Because when you reduce the trust fund, that, you're reducing the interest allocation to that trust fund. But when it's done at the end of the year, the town is eating the interest portion of that should have been reduced.
Maureen's exactly right. So the accounting.
So once a
process-
year, so once a year, we're going into those accounts,
When it's
withdrawing the money in arrears for the previous year,
when it's reconciled.
That's correct.
Exactly. If the accounting process.
and we're distributing money without knowing what the balances are in the account?
Correct.
That seems like that could be a big problem.
Well, the town's accounting process is slow and deliberate. It's not like it happens like that. So by the time it gets through the system, you're reconciling at the end of the year. That's when the adjustments are financially made. So to Steve's point, it makes sense that we know when you appropriate, if nothing else, with just the mental knowledge of saying, okay, they spent $15,000 out of this account, so we know that that's a $15,000 hit. But again, the whole purpose that we brought this forward tonight is exactly what you're asking. It is not like there's a daily tab and it's accurate by the day. That does not exist.
Well,
To the point.
there should be, and so that's obviously why you're here. So this is great. We know the problem. We need to solve it. We need to figure out how to solve it, right? Because frankly, as a resident of the town, I want to be able to go to the website, see the balance in those 26 trust accounts, know how much is available to spend and what we could use it for, so that I can advocate for distributing those funds appropriately. So I think it's important not only for us to have that level of transparency so we can all do our jobs effectively, but it's also public information that should be available to people on the internet. So I think that we should consider that as part of our solution set, is creating transparency and immediacy to the accounting for all of these accounts. And as with the financial performance, the distribution of the funds, the tracking, the expendable, the not expendable, those should all be in the light of day.
But to the treasurer's point, the treasurer isn't even finding out until the end of the year. So how does the treasurer reconcile to that account? When it goes through accounting from us, we send a warrants payable to accounting. But
that's all part of the finance department.
Yeah, finance has got to see that.
but you have to keep people involved in the process.
But the finance director's got to see that. She'll be the first
I mean,
person.
that might have been a problem in the past. It's not a problem anymore.
And that's.
Well, it is, it's still, they haven't got a balance yet.
I know, but none of them works in the treasurer collector office.
So
Ask
one
the
of,
treasurer collector if they've gotten a balance.
no, but one of the things, just to, just sort of bring everyone back.
Hang on a second, guys. We'll get to you. We'll get to you.
To bring everyone back, we've had some internal processes that have been less than ideal, less than efficient. As we all know, we're sort of paying the price right now and trying to get everything back on track.
Totally.
I mentioned to the board that it's my focus to work with the finance team as we're wrapping up, sending everything to the state and starting FY23 to make sure that we can identify those best practices, start to implement them so that we can keep track of everything, revenue coming in on a monthly basis, the expenditures. This is just one more component of it and fits directly in.
Yeah.
So
Right.
besides just for reminding for everyone that this is a long-term, long-standing situation we've been dealing with.
Yeah.
It is the focus of myself and the finance department to get off on the right foot to correct these things so that come the end of FY23, we can identify how to properly handle these things. One of the things is that the paperwork trail is one of those things that we do need to correct, because also because the board authorizes it, does not mean that that money was expended.
Well, and apparently it also doesn't mean that the money is there.
Well, there's that part of it, but there's,
We send checks out in that amount of money.
I
Where does it come from?
we have to, we give an authorization to the ESS director to then buy certain things we may give an amount. So there's coordination, there's communication and documentation that needs to happen, not only this way, but also with finance, but then also within the Council on Aging to make sure that we can accurately track, what was expended by COA as authorized by the board in a fashion that may be over a 6-month period. Yes, we all know we need to come up with a clear policy at the beginning of the fiscal year that identifies this is how much, that's going to be available for expenditure, and then feeding that back in. Clearly, we have work to not only identify standard operating procedures to outline what it should be, so we all are on the same page, but then we have to implement it in a timely fashion so that, we're not at this place of trying to even figure out FY21 as what's in this letter. So,
Okay, great. Yeah, please.
Ken Kowalski has input on this. We can't forget that monies go both ways in the trust, like cemetery. You have money coming in as well as
Yeah. Just for clarification,
Please.
the gatekeeper is really the town accountant. He has the latest amounts. At the beginning of the year, when we first reconcile in trust funds.
Yeah.
He knows what's in every one of the 28 accounts.
Yeah.
As a voucher comes through, he subtracts it. As a burial site gets paid for, he puts it in. All year long, that voucher goes through him. He's the gatekeeper. The treasurer who writes the checks once it's back, vouchers are all signed. The treasurer is responsible to know what the content of the will is, and that money was being spent meets that criteria. So that's his portion. Our portion, trust fund commissioners, is the investment side. We don't get involved in that voucher business. We don't see that. We are looking at RBC Dane to make the best of the investments. We make decisions about that. So we're in a separate category. But if you want to know what the balances are on any given day, it's the town accountants. Now, what the only variation to that is during the year, there's little dividends and market values and all those kinds of things shift around. That's why we only did it once a year. It was crazy to try to tell you what 28 accounts market value was by going on the website, saying what's the market. That wasn't even that important. What's important is the town accountant knew what was available to be spent, and he knew what new monies were coming in. So that's my little nutshell explanation.
Thank you.
It's getting clear as we unravel this.
So just to add to that, so the two things that they would need from us related to, well, once, several of the statements, you get a statement just for those trust accounts. With the exception of the pooled account, that's where you have a bunch of different trusts within one account. And the two items that it would need from us in order to do that, they're on the monthly statement. That would be the income that gets transferred in from the non-expendable accounts each month, and any gains or losses for the fiscal year to date. And that's something we can help summarize. We can work with them on an ongoing basis to give them clear and concise information. If we were to update that more periodically than annually, whether it's quarterly. But that's an allocation that it's the town's application. It's not an allocation that we do at RBC. It's really the town's allocation.
Right. Super helpful. So, yeah. So I think.
So those pool accounts,
Does.
they could reconcile those every month, right?
Theoretically, they could, whether you.
And then they allocate the interest within those pertaining to a percentage of what each trust fund is, correct?
Exactly. So
I think that's the way it should be done.
Could be done. If it's, not enough time,
Yeah.
or like manpower to do that. You might do it quarterly, have it annually, so it's a question of what makes the most sense for the town.
Not going to add the pooled accounts, last year you didn't appropriate anything because they're so small. And some of them are scholarship funds, which by right should be awarded, but the funds are low. And this Gary Bates Ramsey Scholarship, these have lower income or lower assets, but they should still be distributed. So that's why I think it's important that we get the background on all of these. Then your board annually looks and says, okay, these are the trusts that we can appropriate from. They're on your files and everything.
But we know for sure that basically 2.5 years ago, physically, or 3 years ago, physically, you had your hands on every one of the documents.
Yes.
So you could
Absolutely.
speak to, okay. So we know they exist.
Yes.
And then I guess the other question, it's.
We know they did exist.
Yes, that's a good point. We knew they did exist. One thing I think it's come up in the past is, and you hate to be insensitive. However, if you have these trust funds and they're older trust funds and they have very little money in them, does it make sense to keep carrying those trust funds forward? Or does it make sense to expend them and zero them out?
Legally, we don't have that authority. That's why this will lead into the next question for 2 reasons. One is we need copies of what the original trust said. And the second thing is we would request that council look at these. Some of these have been, for a bad word, dormant for probably 10 years. And they're pooled. They create enormous, they create additional work for the financial department because they're all small numbers, but they're still active and they have to be individualized. If we found that there's a trust that has $400 in it and it was appropriated in 1931, and it's been sitting here in the original trust, if legal would look at that and say, legally, you can dissolve that trust because of, naturally, we want to put it back into the investment.
Right, sort of consolidate these.
So this all goes together as to why that documentation.
Yeah, for sure.
Which, not to jump around, but in the interest of time,
We're definitely jumping around.
one of the other requests we had is to have council look at the language of the trust. And I cited the example of the Gary Bates Scholarship Fund that says shall be awarded by the selectmen and 6 citizens from Upton. And who are those 6 citizens? So to keep things in the legal proper process, we need an interpretation as to how that would work. And it's our belief that council should look at this and go through and say, okay. And if it needs going to probate or whatever to get a ruling, so be it.
Yeah.
But we want to act properly, and sometimes it's a little gray.
So a couple thoughts. So I think we can sort of wrap up and summarize the next steps and actions, which I'll do in a second and make sure we're all on the same page with that. But before we do that, who has I'm assuming that RBC provides online access to these brokerage accounts.
Yes.
So who has those login credentials that could look on any given day what the gains, losses, performance are across all of these accounts?
I don't know if Jess has set that up yet. I'll have to check with her on that, but she would be the one that would have access to that.
Okay.
As treasurer.
Okay, because this is something I think historically that we've wanted better, faster, easier, more transparent access into those things. And I don't know that we need it to that degree, right? We're not going to do it daily. I'm not even sure we need to do that kind of reconciliation monthly. But there are times where if we know that somebody's asking for $10,000 out of the welfare fund, right? And this is just an example. We know generally there's plenty of money in that account to distribute $10,000. But it would be great before that meeting if we could say, hey, Jess, why don't you check the account, make sure that we've got $10,000 in cash in the expendable account. I know that won't technically matter, right? The way we're currently running the process. But I think just intellectually, it's good to know, like, hey, we're good. This is clear kind of thing. So if it's Jess or whomever, having that transparency, I think will be great. And knowing that kind of access exists, like this isn't a black box. It's not a mystery. It's stuff you guys do every day, all day for all your customers.
Sure. We have that.
Yeah,
She already has it.
Ken had access to it when he was treasurer.
he did.
I
Okay,
put
good.
statements to
Yeah,
town, and also, I think, I don't know if we had you guys for duplicates, but I think we canceled them all.
Yeah.
Well, I remember going back in time, I remember appropriating funds and going to your office and getting updates. And you had on file, yes, this is the balance with some variation.
Yeah. Yeah.
We would communicate directly on.
Yeah, I was going to say that 5 years ago, I think the process was smoother. I think that Ken had great command, I would say, over what was going on in these accounts. And Kenny Costa, who's now our finance director, was the accounting side of it. So I think we had very good communication between the board, both boards, I would say, treasurer, collector, and accountant. So somehow we've gone backwards to some degree. So we're going to have to, at the very least, and obviously we've lost track of these 8 to 10 documents that are pretty important, very important. So I think it's right. It's an ABC step. So I think the first thing we've got to do is try to figure out how do we get our hands, Joe, I think you're going to have to take the lead on this. Who do we contact to try to figure out where those missing 8 to 10, or maybe it's 26 different documents, wills, testaments, wherever they may be.
well,
Try to get all of that.
okay, we need to discuss that because I think the next step is that they're going to put together the list of what's missing.
Well, we'll give you a list of just the ones we believe that are not available.
I was going to say, right, like, that's what I mean, right? I don't know if you guys have done this, right? But if you've identified that there are 8 to 10 that we don't have, presumably you have the other ones.
Yes.
So having a list of what the trusts are and some sort of a file or some way to say like, okay, here's the trust, here's the documentation, here's the trust, we're missing the documentation, right? So some,
You can find that list, by the way, in 2 annual reports ago.
the list of what? What list?
28, there was a line for all 28.
Yeah.
So that's what we're talking about, those 28.
Oh, no, I'm talking about having a column in those lists with what the documentation is in terms of the wording of the trust, what's not available, which ones aren't available, because that's what we want to make sure we get to look for those particular documents, right? I don't want to look for 26 sets of documents if we only need to look for 8.
What I'm guessing? Based on the dates of the documents.
And for
So are the
the,
blanks the ones that we don't have documentation
No,
for?
those are all the trusts.
Those are the trusts we have.
We know what the trusts are.
Excuse me, I have a list I will send you
Yeah,
that shows the voids.
I mean, I have them. Seen it.
That's easier.
Yeah.
I'll just send it to the town manager.
Yeah.
so I had, from downstairs, had gotten, a large sort of bag of files, sat down with Bob, we went through them. So everything that was supposedly in the bottom of the drawer that you looked at. So now it's just going to be physical labor to go through the boxed, file storage. So that's in the vault. So, yeah, that's something that will just progress, as we can have
But I,
volunteers and labor look for those 8 to 10.
go ahead. You have your list. Yeah, you should go.
I was just going to make mention of these documents, nothing particular on this list, but the
Oh, no,
documents.
I meant the list of things you wrote down as the next steps. Or is that not what you?
Well, I was going to go somewhere else.
Okay, go
I was
ahead.
just gonna
Let's
mention-
have some fun. Go.
Yeah, I was just going to mention that those are hard copies, gets in the safe, stashed somehow, whether we know where they are, obviously we don't know where they are in the short run. Were all those paper documents scanned in somewhere? Is it part of the codification process?
Into a database. But the problem is when you look at the database, the descriptions of what each document are is really lacking. So for example, I started looking through the database, it's like document 500 and something, treasurer, collector, miscellaneous. That's the description. So literally it ends up going back through and just individually just going back through the boxes, trying to find things. some departments were better described than others.
So maybe we'll try to take a slightly different approach. Are you, as the board, comfortable, or do you want me to create an Excel spreadsheet with the information that I'm discussing? Like I can create a template for you to fill out with the information, or do you understand what we're asking for?
I think there's a very simple solution to it. I think Maureen tiptoed all around it.
What is-
The treasurer collector has the balances at the close of the fiscal year. The treasurer collector could set up a spreadsheet. Every time the Board of Selectmen appropriates money, treasurer collector takes it, puts it on that spreadsheet and says the balance went from 20,500, it's now 12,300. And can track that and have an official day-to-day tracking of money appropriated. Because it's just my opinion, but if you try and interfere the way the financial process works for the town to say you're going to get an immediate update, I don't think you're going to get it. I think the process itself, Maureen's nodding, I think the process itself would not serve the way you think it would. It's not an accounting process like add and subtract. It doesn't work that way. Where you appropriate money and it gets drawn out. Yeah.
We're talking about two different things, but I totally understand what you're saying. And I think that's a like,
It's a simple process.
do that tomorrow, right? Just call Kenny, let him know we need to have a spreadsheet with all the funds, all the balances, not at RBC, the actual whatever he tracks, right?
Expenditures that we've already done.
Right, the expenditures we've had. Does he probably has that already.
I mean, one of the things is I'm going to be having them watch this meeting so they can get it firsthand. But the second thing is that also, and this is where I was saying that we're finishing up with getting everything into the state. We're right now, treasurer collector and finance director are focused on making sure that the treasurer collector's office is caught up with FY23. It becomes a question as far as, the importance. If the board wants this for the next meeting, there's going to have to be things that drop off. And
I don't think we need it for the next meeting. This has been
finishing
a
up.
years, so I don't.
So that's where, if it's something that come towards the end of November that we're able to double back and sort of bring back in, that's sort of asking for some patience so we can try to pull the finance department towards that direction. I have full confidence that that Jess knows exactly what she needs to do with the trust funds. The fact is that, we need to follow up with the finance director on the status of FY22 and all those trusts.
Yeah.
To give us a starting point to then continue into FY23.
It sounds like you guys don't want to create that spreadsheet.
Excuse me?
It sounds like you don't want to create that spreadsheet. You're saying the treasurer collector should go through the.
Real candid, it's
Yeah.
not a responsibility.
No, that's what I'm trying to figure out the next step. So now I'm here building the template that has the information. So I will take it from here between myself and the town manager.
Town accountants like having a bank book, plus minus.
But there's more than just the accounting part, right? Because we need we're also trying to track the documents, the trust documents. So we need to have a list, and it sounds like you don't want to. Do you have the list of the 8 that are missing? Okay, great. Can I have it?
This is my only copy, so I said I'd email it.
Okay.
If you want this one, I'll give it to you, but it's my only copy. Been around a
But
while.
the thing is the treasurer can't balance any of.
Yeah, take a picture of it. Perfect. Look at you. Well, he gets paid the big bucks. Because none of this is hard.
Has the list.
No, I'm looking for the list of the missing documents, Ken. I have this list. I know the trusts. We're trying to solve problems. The problem we're trying to solve is 1, reconciling the numbers across the sources, and 2, how we administer each one of these trusts. And before we can figure out how we're going to administer all the trusts and talk to KP, we need to make sure we have all the trust documents. So what I'm interested in is the trusts for which we don't have the documentation, because that's the documentation we're going to try to find. If we can find it, we're going to add that to the list of documents for trusts. If we can't find it, that's going to be one of the questions we ask KP. What do we do for trusts for which we have zero documentation? We'll also ask them, what do we do for these trusts that have $300 in them that we haven't used in 10 years? So there's sort of a sequence of events here that we need to go through. There's known information, there's unknown. I'm just trying to figure out in one place so we can track all of this so we're not having the same conversation in 6 months. So thank you for this. I'll take a picture of it and I'll add it to my spreadsheet and I will talk to Joe. And we'll
Which is
figure out how to
ultimately
take
number
it.
one on your list. So it's, if nothing else comes of tonight's meeting, nothing else, let's solve number one. Right? Because now we can go on to number two. If we meet again
Yeah.
in 6 months, if we can fix number two, we'll fix number two. But at least let's try to get number one fixed. I mean, looking at the way this spreadsheet is laid out, at the very bottom of it and at the very top of it, there's a couple of that show non-expendable. So if they have a non-expendable, there's no balance on non-expendable. It actually appears as though you could expend the whole trust. It looks that way. I'm not saying that that's accurate. I'm just saying.
Yes, as a matter of fact, that's correct. It has non-expendables blank. It means you can spend all of
The entire value.
it, close up to zero.
Okay.
Whereas anything that has non-expendable levy goes to zero. And we collect the dividends and any market increase in those, that principle.
That was a question, I haven't studied the list in quite a while, but, Paul, while we've got you here, a question for you. If the board said, could you give us what you have right now? Could you give us a copy of the balances in the trust? How accurate would that be? Number one, could you create that? And number two, how accurate do you feel it would be? Would it be accurate to January or June?
It wouldn't be accurate for this particular reason. One, I don't know what was expended last year. So for that piece, can you probably in the amount that we expended, and that's what the town accountant reconcile with the numbers that we provide, and then what was expended, figure out those different balances. So don't know what was expended. I couldn't really give you that balance because I don't know. $50,000 was welfare last year. I wouldn't see that.
So I think one of the things that will help us all is if you don't take responsibility for the town's accounting and the town's accounting doesn't take responsibility for your accounting. So we know as a board, when we ask you what the balances of the accounts are, we can get that any day, anytime, just can log into the accounts, just like you log into Bank of America accounts and see the balances any day, all day, 24/7,
Well, we
365.
can't. In theory, we can.
So hold on.
Mhm.
We can, not in theory, we can. Or we can call Paul and he can do it, right? So that's available all the time. That's the brokerage accounting process. That's separate than our town accounting process, which is what tracks what the expenditures are. They start with what RBC gives them at the end of the year. Those are the numbers. They debit those accounts. So we know.
I get all that.
What's
Please
that?
stop me for just a second.
Please, no.
You're on a roll, but you're going down the wrong set of tracks.
All right, let's hear it, Steve.
We have, what I'm asking him is, if I know the starting line, what it's accurate.
Yeah.
And we can look back and say, okay, we know what we've expended.
Yeah.
We can recreate what we've expended. We know what we've done in the last, right? So we can do that.
That's right.
We got that map,
We can.
but we want to have the starting balance. What I'd like to know is, it's accurate to what point in time? Is it accurate when you say last year? Would it be accurate December 31st? Or when you say fiscal year?
What?
Because fiscal year, of course, would be
So
June 30th.
our balances are accurate every month.
That's what I mean. His balances are accurate to the trading moment, time of day.
But it's not reconciled because you don't have.
I know the track I'm going down.
Outstanding checks listed on your reconciliation.
Yeah.
But then we can see what money came out of it, I guess. So if I said, let me see.
He can't see what money we expend out of it until we tell him. So that's why we need the two things to
And he hasn't been
connect.
told.
But I feel that we could do that.
We
I still
can.
feel that we could do that with
We
what
can.
we know.
We can.
And we're currently 15, 16 months.
Yes.
That's right, which is why this is a very good conversation to have. So I've written down 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so there's 8 that we don't have that are on here. So it's right, the 8 that aren't checked off are the ones that we don't have the documentation for. So my question is, for the other 20, Do we have that documentation? Have we put our hands on it somewhere? Who has it?
The others, I had those.
The 20.
As well as
I have
opt-outs.
copies as well. I made copies.
So we have 20, so every one of that's checked off on that list, we physically have the paper copies. You have a copy, you have a copy. Because several of these are 1, 2, 3, 4, of the 8, 5 of them are libraries. So like the first step there would be ask the library trustees. Do you guys have anything on these? Probably not, but we can, that's a place to ask, right? As opposed to filtering through Kenny's boxes. So, okay.
And it appears as though most of the library ones contain a non-expendable portion to them. Looks like there's only really, according to this, one of them that does not.
And so for those that don't have any, right, if they don't have any non-expendable balance, presumably they can be distributed in full and.
Yeah, that's what Ken just said.
Right, is that what?
Zero those out.
We can just zero those out. Okay, that's what you're saying. Yeah. Not that we would do that, but.
If I could interject, there are some that, I'd use the word, have personality to them, that were awarded by citizens now through donations to create scholarship funds. It would be kind of insulting to the families if some of those went away. So
Well,
you have to have consideration.
hold on. What does that mean? Because
I cite the Ramsey Scholarship.
Ramsey Scholarship, 6,000. Yeah, okay. It's got about $6,000 in it.
That was one that I started when Swin Ramsey passed away.
Yeah.
That scholarship, to the point of, well, if the funds are expendable,
Yeah.
you can spend it all. You really do want to away with the intent of what it was there for. So I only use caution that there's a motion.
So you in that example, you would suggest we look at maybe a way to do it would be to say, okay, it's got $6,200 in it. If you want that to go on in perpetuity, we would only be able to distribute the earnings any year, which would be what, $600 on a 10% year and $60 on a 1% year. Okay.
Or if we were to expend, say, $600 out of each year.
So it sounds like you know something. I'm sorry.
You're getting all torqued up. I'm just going to divert.
I just have a question, please.
But you could take, I know the family, I understand what you're saying. And I'm not suggesting we do this because again, I think our scholarship policy, and I think we only award something like out of multiple different accounts, I think we only award 6 scholarships.
Yeah.
But you could take a particular scholarship like that, extend, let's just say good year, bad year, or indifferent, $600 per year out of that one account. And it could take 30 years before it actually zero out. You could do something like that. And again, I'm not going to be here in 30 years. So.
What? So the Ramsey Scholarship, that's one that we don't have any documentation for? Okay. Are there, for the 8 that we don't have, other than going to the library trustees as or as longtime Upton residents, Kenny, do you or Bob, do you have any sort of thoughts on someone that could help us with the E.W. Ristine Scholarship, the Ramsey Scholarship, or the library, well, not the Library of Good Fortune, or the Senior Center Scholarship?
The only suggestion I could make is, and you're already doing that, is to reach out to the given departments.
Okay.
And hopefully and the other one might be, and technically, the town clerk should record copies of all of those. I don't know.
Yeah.
Again, I don't know, but that might be a source too.
Okay. I didn't know if on the Ramsey one, if there was a family or people you knew if you started it, but.
That's been a number of years now.
Okay. Okay. So, I think the actions are, I'm going to complete a template that has all the trusts, whether we have the documentation or not. If we have the documentation, what the current policy is around distributing those funds, if there is one, what the current balances are, expendable, non-expendable, of the expendable, what the cash value is and the non-cash value. I'll have to work with Paul on that. And then we'll work with Kenny over time, it doesn't have to be right now, to find the documentation that we can. I'll send an email to the library trustees and to the town clerk regarding the ones that aren't library, and we'll have Kenny as quickly as possible take the balances, update the balances that he has to get those to the Board of Commissioners so that they can see what we've done. When's the last date at which you sort of received an update? Because that will be the date back to which Kenny needs to go to track the ins and outs.
Well,
I think I heard 16 months, but
so that would be the last fiscal year, fiscal year ending June 30th, 21.
And you don't have the balances yet,
The most logical.
or you don't have the
We
expenditure.
don't have to reconcile the balances.
I would,
6/30/22.
okay.
Yes.
I would
Good.
recommend when reconcile 6/30/22, that be the starting point. And
Then the treasurer can keep track of it on a monthly
Track it.
basis.
it's a simple process saying, okay, they appropriate, we got
Well, but
to.
we can't have a year gap. I think that would create a
He's working on the 6/30.
He's got the numbers now.
Let's work, let him finish that. Just get the French. So we'll reduce that to the form.
I mean, the treasurer can't actually reconcile anything now until she has a good balance as of June 30th.
of June 30th of
2022.
Right, and she can't get an accurate balance of June 30th, 2022 until she takes the balance that we have from June 30th, 2021 and calculates the ins and outs for the fiscal year of 2021.
No, we've already done the
Fiscal year 2022. I think
This is 2022.
21 is done.
21 is done.
We're in
Okay.
2023.
Right,
fiscally.
I understand. Okay. So we're all
But she
set.
can't balance anything until she has a good balance to start with.
Certified.
Well-
Yes.
What's the certified balance?
That means that the due process of law. and
Has been
Commonwealth,
fulfilled.
everybody-
Because that,
That's what you know.
I mean, so we need the balance on 7/1/2021 to
No,
6/30. No, you have that. So we need the balance.
from 7/1/2021
That's 7.
to June 30th, 2022.
Yes.
Right, those 12 months. Is that why 22?
Yeah,
We need to pass incidents.
right. Okay.
I can assist with it. I think last year we did a conference call to actually walk through the spreadsheet and make sure it's correct and process.
I mean,
Worked out well.
town accountant issues the check, so he's got the record of all the expenditures. I think he is involved in the investment process too, correct?
Yes.
No, I don't think he is.
I think he is.
Okay. So what he's working on now that we're just going to need, so right now Kenny's working on the fiscal year 2022, which is from 7/1/2021 to 6/30/2022. What was spent in total out of each of those accounts is what he's working on.
Correct.
And when is he going to get that to you? Did he say?
Doesn't have to get it to me. He usually just asks me, at the end of the year, they'll ask me to reimburse the town any funds that were expended.
Yeah.
It's good that I do get a copy of it because then when there's a question.
Of course. So who does he need to give that to? To the board?
To the treasurer, and then the treasurer is the one who's authorized to ask me to send a check to the town.
So I'll be checking.
But that's Kenny. So Kenny is now the finance director, so the treasurer reports to Kenny.
Yes.
So when I say Kenny is the treasurer collector, the finance department, the accounting person, it's all Kenny. So when Kenny has that, he should give it to you?
Yes, he can give it to me.
Okay,
Jess is the one who's signs updated form of the treasurer. That should be the case or not?
Do you need those?
I already got
It's the treasurer's responsibility, correct?
it. Must sign 2 weeks ago.
For fiscal year 2022?
Or the fact that she's a new treasurer and the previous treasurer was.
Gaining access.
That, and every time there's a treasurer change,
That all has to be
the
changed.
treasurer updates all the paperwork.
Okay, but you didn't get the expenditures for the year 2022. I got you. Okay, sorry, I was confused. Okay.
And that's
The
something.
authorized person is Jess.
So that's all stuff that I'll.
Shouldn't be the case, and we need to fix it, we can.
Okay.
We can.
And Paul needs that information so he knows how much to reimburse the
Of
town.
course.
But Kenny's bringing that report together, not necessarily for Paul, but for the town.
Of course.
Okay, so we-
No, I understand, but that's the combination though, right? It's not like Kenny's doing a thing and Paul's doing a thing, right? It needs to be one thing.
Yes.
So that's what I'm trying to get to is the point of like, because I think that's part of the problem, right? Is there's been this once a year handoff and then it disappears from your perspective and it disappears from Kenny's perspective and ne'er the two shall meet except the once a year. That's not the model anymore. The model now is there's constant communication, there's constant visibility and transparency of you guys into those expendable accounts through Kenny, because the same way that you can log into whomever here or just can log into the RBC accounts and see on any given day or moment or minute what the balances are, Jess can do that on our side. So if you have a question or the board has a question about what's been spent out of these accounts, Jess can go into RBC and see the balances. Jess can go into the accounting system for the town and see what's been expended and see what's pending. Like that just needs to be done.
I hate to say, the responsibility of the trust funds is the treasurer collector. She should be doing, whoever the treasurer collector is, should be doing all the work.
Right, so as you described it, what Maureen's saying, the communication,
Yeah.
even though Kenny is above Jess, the
He's the
communication.
auditor
Yeah,
of
he's the
the
auditor.
treasurer. But the treasurer is the one that
It's
should
really,
be doing it.
right, so the treasurer, what Maureen's saying is the treasurer and Paul.
Yeah.
Some back and forth.
Yeah, that's
That
fine.
back and
That's
forth communication.
sure.
And I mean, when there is an
Kenny is
expenditure.
Kenny is accountable, right? He runs the department, so
He's
I don't
accountable,
care
but
what
he's
Jeff
the
does.
overseer, what the
Right.
treasurer does.
I'm gonna hold Joe, we as a board should be holding Joe and Kenny accountable for whatever it is that Jess needs to do with Paul.
When we vote an amount of money,
Yeah,
that should be issued by the treasurer.
right,
It should go through the warrant process so that she knows or he knows
yeah,
that she or he has to deduct that from the accounts.
yeah,
Right now, it goes directly to the accountant or finance director and is issued through that when he does the warrants payable.
Right.
And whether he's communicating that to the treasurer or not,
yeah.
we don't know.
That's
That's
right now,
the
that's
process.
where there's, what it looks like is that the way that things had been set up, that is exactly how it works. And that's exactly what we need to.
And maybe when we do this workshop,
Mhm.
that we can get everybody in a room and we can discuss policy and procedures on how everything is supposed to work.
Totally, absolutely. Someone needs to write the process down.
Yep.
It's all in Mass General Law. I mean, it's there.
But one of the things is we don't have standard operating procedures, and that's one of the things that I tasked departments with pulling together so that we're not in the situation.
Right,
We know that staff is mobile. They can leave and go to another town. We need these standard operating procedures documented so that when people come in, they can see, oh, this is the process. Okay,
This is how we do it.
yeah.
So
And
that's,
we should recognize, right, like roles have changed. We just reorganized the finance department. There's been a lot of turnover. And people have a historical knowledge of how to do all these things and how they work, and it wasn't written down, and that's fine. And so now we're at the point where we've got new people, we've got a new structure, and we're learning how things need to work, and we're gonna figure this out.
Within the
Not really hard.
reorganization, a process got skipped. So we've got to just put that process back into place ultimately.
100%, 100%, yes.
Oh,
All right, what else?
that's one. On to two.
No, should be, the last one is, and this involves council. We asked council to look at the language of when the town accepted the trust fund commission and established it. The language is ambiguous. It's, to read, shall distribute the income in accordance with the terms of the trust. We don't distribute the income. So that type of language needs to be cleaned up. We don't feel it's our responsibility to be allocating funds, especially when it comes to one like the welfare trust that's discrete, none of our business. We certainly want to manage the funds. That's where we end responsibility. So that language, and it was accepted by town 95 or 2005, whatever. It needs to be looked at. So if council's looking at the trust, you can take a look at that.
Would it make sense? If not, that's fine. For you to look at that and sort of like redline the parts that you're like, this doesn't make sense.
I'm honestly rather than council.
Yeah, that's fine.
Other communities have the trust fund commissioner, so.
Yeah,
Steal.
plagiarize.
I wonder if this was boilerplate for the day. And
Maybe
it's
it just
been-
hasn't been updated.
Yeah, perhaps it's something that needs to be looked at. Yeah. And again, it's probably going to be a couple of word changes and red strike out a couple of
Right.
sentences.
And that would go to town meeting, but obviously, that would be reviewed and revised in partnership with you guys.
You know, I thought a few years ago, we discussed this, and I thought that we had agreed to have KP take a look at some questions that we had. And I don't recall if that was ever done. I know we
last
don't.
November.
Yeah.
It was last November.
Yeah.
Nothing.
23rd to be exact.
Been on this hunt for a while.
Call me on the show.
So, yeah. All right. What else?
That's pretty much it, unless my colleagues, anything.
All right.
Good dialogue. You know,
This is it. That's what we're here for.
that's what it's all about.
is what
Thank
we
you
do.
for the time. We appreciate it.
Thank you guys for the
In the
time.
town manager, I assume they'll be getting communication back.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Attention.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let me know if you have any questions. I got a spreadsheet.
Yeah, we've already. Okay, thanks very much.
All right.
Have a good evening.
Yep, you too.
I'll send this to you guys.
They're not-
See you later.
You can send it. They're not going to open it, but you can send it.
Paul, well, they're gonna open it because Paul's got to fill it out. I'll send this to you.
Sure.
Thank you. Great. I appreciate that.
Did you miss us?
I was here to provide historical perspective.
Thank you very much. Yeah. What's your email address?
It's paul.mcdonough@rbc.com. Might even have the card.
Oh, speaking of historical perspective, how long have you been managing these funds for us?
So since 2002, 2003, so just about 19, 20 years.
You see how close I was.
But if you have any questions, if you want one, you can
Thank you.
call me anytime.
Sure. Thank you.
You can shoot it one.
Thanks.
Thank you.
One extra N in McDonough. Otherwise, I had it right. All right, Paul. Thank you, sir. See you later. Okay. All right. Let's go back. Bear with me one sec. That out.
K Rotors.
It's coming up, isn't it?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
That's great. Yes. Yes, they're great. All right. Yeah. Good. All right. Next up, and I would like to. We were doing so good.
Time.
We were ahead of time. We were like 10 or 15 minutes ahead of time, but that was that was many years in the making. So that was a good catch up to do. Just get it on the table. Okay. So road race application for the Nipmuc 5K road race. Welcome, Alyssa. I think you're here to talk about the Nipmuc 5K road race. I don't want to bypass you, Brian, but it looks like Alyssa feels like this is a leadership opportunity.
Absolutely. I'm all for it.
So we are interested in hosting a 5K road race at our school, and we had done this last year around the same time, but this day is Sunday, November 6th that we want to do it. We have already been in contact with the police, as I think we said on the form that we sent. And we've already got it approved from the school. And that.
Great. And is this the same route that you used last year?
Yes, it is.
Great. Questions?
Quick question, Alyssa, could you tell us, are you doing this as a fundraiser? Did I see is this a DECA fundraiser or what is it in regard to?
This is for our DECA project, and we are raising money for the National MS Society for multiple sclerosis disease.
Very good, thank you.
Green?
No, very good cause.
Alyssa, are you representing some organization or group at Nipmuc, or is this just a specific volunteer opportunity you're pursuing?
DECA is the group.
I'm asking her.
Yeah, this is for my DECA project. Is a club at Nipmuc.
It's a club at Nipmuc. What's your role in the club?
I'm just a general member, and for the club, I have to make a project, and my project is a community giving project. So we are doing a 5K to raise money to give back to our community.
Got it. What year are you?
I'm a senior.
Senior. Great. Well, congratulations. This is a great opportunity and a great project. And the town's lucky and the school is lucky and DECA is fortunate to have leaders like you in their organization. So thank you for taking the time, effort, and energy to support this and to do this. You should be very proud of yourself.
One other quick question.
Well,
Alyssa, what is DECA an acronym for?
So it doesn't actually stand for anything anymore, I don't believe. I think,
Yeah, she's right though.
yeah. It used to stand for something, but basically DECA is just a business club.
Okay.
great. Okay. Anything else?
No, great.
I'm good.
All right. Wonderful. I will take a motion.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I move that the Board of Selectmen vote to approve the road race application for the Nipmuc 5K road race to be held on Sunday, November 6th, 2022 at 10 a.m.
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries by unanimous action. Thank you very much. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Very
Good
much.
luck. Hopefully you get a large turnout.
Good job.
Thank you.
All right. Minutes.
Minutes. This is just for the executive session.
Yeah.
For
October 4, 10,
10th and August 16th. Oh,
executive session.
executive session, okay.
I looked them over. They look good to me.
Yep.
Who would you
All set? Yep.
Okay, I'll take a motion.
I move that the Board of Selectmen vote to approve the meeting minutes of October 4th, 10th, and August 16th executive session minutes of 2022.
I will second the motion.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carried by unanimous action. Thank you. Going to executive session.
Yes.
Entertain a motion.
You can strike the first part because that's only in there if we had to make edits to the executive session. So that's why I have it as the first part of the motion. So
Just to get rid of the number one part.
Yeah.
Okay. I move that the select board vote to enter into executive session to approval pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 214, Section 1B, and Mass General Law, Chapter 4, Section 7, Clause 220, 26C to discuss financial assistance to residents in need and not reconvene in open session. Stephen Mattelli, aye.
Maureen, you know, aye.
Brett Simus, aye. Motion carries by unanimous action.